Part 3. The words settled into the rain like stones disappearing beneath dark water. Because he never answers anything. No one answered her. Not Lucien, not Sofia. Only the steady rhythm of rain continued to fall against the umbrella and across the polished sidewalks of Manhattan. Sofia remained perfectly still, the black leather padfolio pressed gently against her chest. She had never imagined that accepting an invitation to Vane Tower would place her in the middle of a story that had clearly begun long before she entered it. This wasn't an ordinary disagreement. It wasn't even an argument anymore. Arguments belonged to people still trying to prove each other wrong. What stood before her now felt different. It felt like the quiet aftermath of too many conversations that never happened. For the first time since Cassandra had appeared outside Vane Tower, Sofia looked at her without uncertainty. Beneath the anger, beneath every accusation, beneath the frustration that had filled every question, she finally saw what had been there all along. Pain. Not the pain of betrayal alone, the pain of someone who had waited too long for answers that never came. Sofia's heart tightened. She barely knew Lucien Vane. She had met him only twice. Once at the charity gala where an unfortunate accident had brought them together, and again inside Vane Tower where he had offered her a contract marriage that had turned her entire world upside down. Everything else about him remained a mystery. Yet standing here, watching the silence stretch between them, she realized one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever existed between these two people, it had not ended because they stopped caring. It had ended because somewhere along the way, they had stopped talking. Cassandra searched Lucien's face one final time. There had once been a time when his silence fascinated her. She used to believe it meant strength. She used to believe when he finally chose to speak, every word mattered. Now, that same silence felt like an impenetrable wall she no longer had the strength to climb. The city continued moving around them. Taxis splashed through rain-soaked streets. Pedestrians hurried under umbrellas. Office workers disappeared into glowing buildings. No one noticed the three figures standing motionless outside Vane Tower. No one knew that while Manhattan continued living another ordinary evening, one woman was quietly realizing that hope could not survive forever on unanswered questions. Lucien never looked away from Cassandra. His expression remained calm, controlled, almost impossible to read. But for the briefest moment, something shifted behind his eyes. It wasn't enough to answer her questions. It wasn't enough to undo the years that stood between them. It was simply the silent recognition that sometimes the deepest wounds are not caused by cruel words, but by the words that are never spoken at all. Cassandra slowly nodded to herself. It wasn't the kind of nod that came from agreement. It came from acceptance. The painful kind. The kind that finally arrives after every question has been asked and every answer has been met with silence. A faint, defeated smile touched the corner of her lips before disappearing almost as quickly as it had come. "I understand now," she whispered, though she wasn't really speaking to either of them. She was speaking to herself. She had spent so long believing there was still one conversation left to have, one explanation left to hear, one truth that would somehow make the years of confusion finally make sense. But standing here, watching Lucien remain exactly as he always had, she realized she had been waiting for something that was never going to come. Slowly, she took a single step backward. The rain had been falling on her from the moment she arrived, soaking her hair and tracing silent paths across her face, but she no longer seemed to notice the cold. She simply put a little more distance between herself and the two people standing together under the umbrella. Some distances were too great for an umbrella to bridge. She looked at Sofia. There was no resentment in her eyes now, only quiet exhaustion. "I'm sorry you had to witness this." Her voice was calm. "You didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of something that has nothing to do with you." Sofia opened her mouth, instinctively wanting to respond, wanting to tell her that she didn't fully understand what was happening either, that she wasn't trying to replace anyone, that none of this was what she'd expected when she walked into Vane Tower that afternoon. Before she could find the right words, Cassandra gave her a small, weary smile. "I hope..." She searched for the strength to finish the sentence. "I hope he gives you the answers he could never give me." The words landed far harder than any accusation she had spoken earlier. For the first time since the confrontation had begun, Lucien moved. Not much, just one step. "Cassandra." His voice was low, calm, almost swallowed by the rain. She froze. Hope betrayed her one last time. She waited. She waited for the explanation she had imagined hearing 1,000 different ways over countless sleepless nights. She waited for him to finally tell her why everything had fallen apart, why he had pushed her away, why every question she had ever asked had been met with another wall of silence. Lucien looked at her for a long moment. His jaw tightened. With quiet finality, he said only 4 words. "We're done here." The world seemed to stop. Cassandra stared at him without blinking. Those 4 words told her everything they never had. Not because they answered her questions, but because they confirmed there would never be any answers. She gave the smallest nod, not to him, to herself, as though she were finally giving herself permission to stop waiting. Without another word, Cassandra turned and walked toward the black sedan that had been parked only a short distance away since the moment she arrived. The driver was already waiting. He hurried out into the rain and opened the rear door without saying a word. Cassandra slipped inside, never once looking back. A moment later, the door closed with a quiet thud. The sedan pulled away from the curb, its taillights glowing red through the curtain of rain before gradually disappearing into the Manhattan traffic. Sofia watched the car until it was no longer visible. Only then did she realize she had been holding her breath. When she finally looked toward Lucien, he was still staring in the direction the car had gone, completely motionless. His expression remained unreadable. For reasons she couldn't explain, he didn't look like a man who had won. He looked like a man who had just watched something irreplaceable drive away. The taillights of Cassandra's car slowly disappeared into the curtain of rain, their crimson glow fading until they were swallowed completely by the darkness of the city. For several long moments, neither Sofia nor Lucien moved. The street that had been filled with accusations only seconds ago suddenly felt unnaturally quiet, as though the storm itself had decided to listen to whatever would be said next. Sofia tightened her grip on the leather folder pressed against her chest and looked up at the man standing beside her beneath the umbrella. There were dozens of questions fighting for space inside her mind, but only one managed to escape. What did she mean? Lucien kept his eyes on the rain-soaked skyline stretching beyond the avenue. His expression was unreadable once again, the brief crack in his composure already hidden behind the calm mask he seemed to wear so effortlessly. He didn't answer. Sofia waited. Lucien? Still nothing. She took a slow breath, trying to keep the frustration out of her voice. Did she lie? Only then did he look at her. For the briefest moment, she saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. It wasn't anger, it wasn't annoyance. It was pain. Raw, personal. It appeared so quickly that she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it, because just as suddenly, it vanished. "Go home," he said quietly. Sofia stared at him in disbelief. "That's your answer?" "It's my advice." She let out a small, incredulous laugh. "And if I want the truth?" "You don't." His answer came without hesitation, not because he wanted to dismiss her, but because he genuinely believed the truth would only hurt her. Sofia shook her head. "You don't get to decide that." The words landed between them with surprising force. The umbrella suddenly felt much smaller than before. They were standing close enough to hear each other's breathing over the rain. "You asked me to marry you," she continued, refusing to lower her gaze. "You don't get to ask someone to sign a contract that changes their entire life and then expect them not to ask questions." For the first time since they'd met, Lucien looked genuinely caught off guard. Not offended, not irritated, simply unprepared for someone to challenge him without fear. His eyes searched hers for several quiet seconds before the faintest trace of amusement touched his face. "You ask a lot of questions." Sofia folded her arms. "You give very suspicious answers." For a heartbeat, the corner of Lucien's mouth threatened to become an actual smile. It never quite got there, but it was enough for Sofia to notice. Enough to remind her that beneath the polished billionaire the entire city seemed to admire or fear, there was still an ordinary man capable of reacting like everyone else. The rain continued to fall around them, softer now, almost gentle against the pavement. Sofia looked at him for another moment before asking the question that had been haunting her since she'd walked into Vane Tower that afternoon. "Why me?" Lucien frowned slightly. "What?" She held up the leather folder containing the contract. "You could have chosen anyone. Models, socialites, businesswomen, women who'd probably do anything just to have your last name. So why me?" This time, he didn't answer immediately. His silence was different now. Not evasive. Reflective. Sofia sighed softly. "There you go again." "What?" "The silence." A faint breath escaped him that almost sounded like a laugh. "It's not a silence thing." "Then answer me." He looked at her for what felt like an eternity. The rain rolled from the edge of the umbrella in slow streams around them, sealing them inside a world that suddenly seemed to contain only the two of them. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost the guarded confidence it usually carried. "Because you looked at me like a person." Sofia blinked. "What?" "At the gala." His eyes never left hers. "When you spilled the wine." She remembered it instantly. The embarrassment, the ruined dress, the expensive suit she'd nearly destroyed, the crowd that had stared as though she'd committed a crime. "You were embarrassed," Lucien continued quietly. "You were angry at yourself. You thought you'd ruined the biggest opportunity of your career." She lowered her eyes slightly, remembering every humiliating second. "But even then," he continued quietly, "when you looked at me, you weren't looking at Lucien Vane, the billionaire everyone talked about. You were looking at a man whose evening you'd accidentally made worse." His voice softened even more. "You apologized because you thought you'd inconvenienced another human being." Sofia found herself unable to speak. "I can't remember the last time someone did that." The confession seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't calculated. It simply slipped out before he had the chance to stop it. For the first time since meeting Lucien Vane, Sofia saw not the billionaire everyone talked about, but the lonely man hidden beneath the reputation. Somehow, standing together beneath a single umbrella while rain washed the city around them, Neither of them noticed that the quiet between them no longer felt uncomfortable. It felt understood. Just as Sofia opened her mouth to say something, the sharp vibration of her phone shattered the moment. She glanced down at the screen. Maya was calling. The rain hadn't stopped by the time Sofia lowered her phone. It no longer sounded gentle against the pavement. It roared around them, swallowing the city in a curtain of silver that blurred every light and every passing car into streaks of color. Just seconds ago, she had been standing beneath Lucien's umbrella, wondering why a man like him had chosen her. Now, everything inside her had been replaced by a cold knot of dread. Her fingers trembled around the phone as Maya's frightened voice echoed in her mind. Someone had forced their way into the apartment. The front door had been splintered. Drawers had been emptied onto the floor. Cabinets ripped open. Furniture overturned. Maya had barely managed to get out before whoever had broken in returned to the building. She had locked herself inside a neighbor's apartment before calling. Sofia realized she had stopped breathing. Lucien noticed before she did. He didn't ask another question. He simply watched her face for one long second, and something in his own expression shifted. The calm billionaire who had stood unmoved when Cassandra accused him moments ago disappeared. In his place was a man whose instincts had suddenly awakened. "Get in the car." The words weren't harsh. They weren't even loud. They carried the quiet certainty of someone who expected to be obeyed because there wasn't time to argue. Sofia looked at him, still struggling to process everything. "I have to go home." "And you will," he answered evenly. "You're just not going alone." She wanted to protest. Every sensible part of her screamed that accepting another ride from him after everything Cassandra had said was reckless. Yet another part of her, the part that had watched his face change the instant she mentioned the break-in, recognized something she hadn't expected to see. Concern. Not curiosity, not obligation. Concern. Without another word, Lucien guided her toward the black sedan waiting by the curb. His driver was already outside, holding the rear door open as rain hammered against the polished roof of the car. The warmth inside wrapped around Sofia the moment she climbed in, but it did little to quiet the storm inside her chest. The drive began quietly. Outside, the city rushed past in shimmering reflections, neon signs dancing across rain-soaked streets while thunder rolled somewhere above the skyline. Sofia stared out the window, clutching her phone so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Something wasn't right. Maya hadn't said anything was stolen. Not her laptop, not even the emergency savings hidden inside the kitchen cupboard, not even her jewelry her grandmother had left her. If it had been an ordinary burglary, something should have been missing. Instead, everything had simply been searched. The thought settled into her stomach like a stone. Beside him, Lucien hadn't looked away from the passing streets once. His jaw remained tight. His fingers rested motionless against his knee. To anyone else, he would have appeared perfectly composed. Sofia was beginning to realize that with Lucien Vane, the quieter he became, the more dangerous the situation probably was. Finally, she broke the silence. "Do you think it was random?" He answered immediately. "No." She turned toward him. "You didn't even think about it." "I did. For 2 seconds. That was enough." His certainty unsettled her more than if he had admitted he didn't know. "What makes you so sure?" Lucien looked out at the rain before answering. "Because random people steal." He paused. "They don't search." A chill crawled across Sofia's spine. She replayed Maya's panicked description. Drawers opened, books thrown off shelves, cushions sliced open, closets emptied. Nothing taken, everything searched. She swallowed hard. "You think they were looking for something?" "I know they were." The words landed heavily between them. Sofia frowned. "But I don't own anything valuable." Lucien slowly turned to face her. That's exactly why this concerns me." For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Sofia searched his face, trying to understand what he wasn't saying. Ever since she'd met him, she had begun noticing a pattern. Whenever the truth came too close, Lucien stopped talking. His silence wasn't emptiness, it was protection. Protection from what? Or from whom? The question lingered in her mind.